Well, kia ora, nau mai, haere mai. Welcome to Tourism New Zealand's webinar, which was going to be focusing, as it often is, on a regular basis on a domestic market update. But of course, the world's gone a bit crazy in the last week or so a little bit of a change up to start today. First of all, my name's Bjoern. I'm the Industry Relations Manager for Tourism New Zealand. And of course, the other gentleman on the screen you'll know well is Bjoern Spreitzer, who's our General Manager Domestic. Bjorn's going to give his normal update towards the end of this webinar. But first and foremost, we thought with all of these changes happening to the COVID-19 status updates around the country, Stephen England Hall, the Chief Executive of Tourism New Zealand, will join us at the start of this webinar just to give you a brief update on what these changes mean for Tourism New Zealand, and also to take some questions on that wider perspective. So Stephen can only join us for the first half an hour. And he's just coming from another meeting as well. So he'll, in fact, he's popping on the screen as we speak. Kia ora, welcome, Stephen. I was just introducing you to that you'll be here for the first half an hour before you have to race away to something else. And just to thank you for joining on this webinar, Bjorn's normal one on the domestic market activity, just to give a little bit of perspective, seeing the world's gone crazy again in the last few days, and the opportunity after you've said a few words to maybe take some questions from people on, well, just about anything. So welcome, Stephen. We'll leave you to make a few comments on this ever-changing world.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Bjorn. Nice to see you on the call, everyone. I guess the starting point for this discussion, a bit like last week, for those of you who attended our session on Australia, it's just recognising that, things have changed a bit again since we initiated our program of work here within Tourism New Zealand in support of the domestic recovery and, of course, the broader economic recovery as well. It's an interesting, I don't know what the sort of feeling is out there amongst all of you at the moment, but certainly people I've been talking to is kind of a mixed thing. One is, hey, we've been here before, we've had some setbacks, and look at the way in which we've been able to support each other and bounce back. This is a bit of a frustration. Certainly, it's another hurdle for us to overcome, and it's another thing that we have to be, I guess, contend with moving forward, is the possibility or the increasing likelihood that we will have, further periods where different parts of the economy might be at different levels. And I think that complexity, that kind of need for recognition that we're not completely out of the woods here, even domestically, and we had a great recovery for a period of time there. The work that people did collectively has made a really positive impact and helped to accelerate the recovery that was available to us in that window. And I think what I'd like to propose or contend with right now is that this is another scenario where we're just going to take a pause, have a look at what's going on, adjust our activity, adjust our focus and our marketing and activities, and then come back through the other side of that and start again and look at some other alternative ways to stimulate economic growth and activity and drive tourism business. And so from a Tourism New Zealand point of view, which Bill will probably spend a little bit more time talking about in detail today, is how do we do that? How do we operationalize this kind of another layer of complexity, if you like, into how we're going to try and stimulate demand? We had a, if you like, a draft plan. I wouldn't call it Bravo, I'd call it, Alpha Plus, that we had been sitting in the background thinking, in the event that there was going to be a situation where, part of the country was at level 3 and other parts be at level 2 or level 1, how would we activate that? And I know Bjorn and the team have spent time since the change in the status looking at how we bring that to life. So it's sort of gone from being something we might want to use to now something that we look like we absolutely have to use. So look, it's not an unexpected scenario. It's just a bit frustrating, especially with the momentum that has been built. Also, we think about the just coming back to the effects or the impact that we've had coming out of lockdown across the country. The July numbers and the June numbers are pretty positive. I don't know if we're going to share any specifics on that today or not, Bjorn, but but certainly, you know, the results have been fantastic. It shows what we can do when we need to. It shows there's a huge amount of support amongst New Zealanders for the sector and getting in behind local and supporting our businesses. And now we're just got to, as I said before, now we've got to find a way to recalibrate against this kind of new reality. So I guess, look, I don't want to take up too much of the time. I just wanted to acknowledge that, you know, we're here to support the industry. We'll adapt and adjust our plans as much as we can to support recovery and continue to invest in recovering the economy and recovering businesses and supporting all of you. You know, we will have to contend with the reality that if Auckland's at level 3, they take a huge chunk of expenditure out of regional New Zealand. But also, the opposite is also true. The rest of New Zealand's at level 2. How do we enable that part of their country to continue to operate, and let's support that as much as possible? And of course, then finally, when Auckland does come out of level 3, how do we ensure that we stimulate both movement of Aucklanders around New Zealand, and then secondly, how do we get Kiwis back or other New Zealanders back into Auckland? Because the Auckland economy obviously needs it. And Auckland needs New Zealand, and New Zealand needs Auckland to be successful and strong. So how do we balance that? And look, that's part of what we've been thinking about. I'm more than happy to take a few questions if you like, Paul, and just you know, be available for a little while here, listening and supporting Bjoern, and obviously available if questions come up before I'm due to drop off. So I'll pass the mic back to you for now. Thanks, Paul.
Brilliant. Thanks, Stephen. Yes, everybody, if you want to ask Stephen a question, head to the Q&A icon down the bottom of the screen, type something in, and we can tackle any questions you want to answer. Stephen's around for only about another 10 or 15 minutes. And if nobody has any questions, we'll give you a moment or two, then we'll hand over to Bjoern to do his usual updates on domestic activity. But here we go. Here's the first question coming in. What domestic activity is planned to support Auckland when we move into level 2?
I think, Stephen, you're on mute.
Oh, thank you. Bjoern might have a bit more detail on this than I do. Look, our view at the moment is there's two parts to that. One is how do you support Auckland's recovery, and then the other is how do you get Aucklanders back out into the rest of New Zealand, because regional New Zealand actually pretty much every region of New Zealand benefits from Auckland being an active part of the tourism or domestic visitor economy in some way, shape or form. And of course, them being locked down is negatively impacting the performance across the whole country. And then the opposite is also true to the question that's been raised more specifically. We will also need to encourage or supercharge, if you like, Auckland's recovery out of the back of this lockdown, because we'll need to get the rest of New Zealand visiting Auckland as appropriate. So look, the key thing there will be how we partner with Auckland, how we'll partner with 18 and make sure that we can lean in behind them and provide the right kind of impetus to be able to support activities. As all of you know very well, a key component of driving visitation to the urban environment, of course, is things like events and activities, and so key there will be for us in terms of Tourism New Zealand's investment and linking that in with things that are happening already in the ground in Auckland and how we can make sure that happens. So that's really a big part of it, is how do we upweight that activity. I know Bill might speak to this, but we've already got planned phases focusing on certain urban opportunities throughout the next 12 months, and how we drive that, and some of that will have to be looked at in terms of weighting and timing and so forth to make sure we get the biggest bang for our buck. So hopefully that answers your question. We're definitely keen to support Auckland, both in getting Aucklanders moving in Auckland, but also around the rest of New Zealand, and also make sure we get the rest of New Zealand to spend some time up here in this great city. Excellent,
thanks, Stephen. So just waiting if there's any more questions, everybody out there, feel free to type them into the Q&A box. Otherwise, Stephen, you're free to listen in for as Bjoern kicks off, and we know you have to race away to probably yet another Zoom meeting because you're locked in.
I do have. I've got about 6 left to do today, so it's always a pleasure. It's a familiar territory for most of us, isn't it? This whole running our businesses and engaging with the world through Zoom. To be honest, I much prefer actually visiting and experiencing things face to face, but it is what it is. We'll just have to deal with the reality that is in front of us right now. If I get a chance to talk to you all again, look forward to getting back out, staying in touch, and getting out to see everyone as soon as possible, and making sure that we again, work with all of you to get this visitor economy up and running and booming. It is a great industry. It's a great opportunity in front of New Zealand to shape it in a way that's going to be good for all of us. And look, at the end of the day, right now, we're about keeping jobs and driving businesses and keeping the economy moving. And how do we do that? And we think about that every day. So look, very keen to continue to stay engaged with all of you. Thanks very much.
Brilliant. Thanks, Stephen. Hand over to you, Bjoern. I'm sure you've got a presentation to load, and we're in your hands for the next 30 or 40 minutes.
Cool, thank you, Paul, and hey, thank you, Stephen. So if we got you for another 10-15 minutes, guys, keep asking questions as well whilst we got Stephen, and I'm obviously happy to answer questions afterwards as well. I'll just gonna share my screen with everyone. Bear with me for 1 second. Ironically, I haven't done a webinar in at least 10 days, so might be a little bit rusty here. Here we go. Look, like Paul already said, the intent of this webinar series is something that I think we committed to at TNZ to say, look, as we work in domestic more and more, we just really want to make sure everybody has got the opportunity and is strongly connected to our work. So as a result, there's a domestic webinar running every 4 to 5 weeks, and they're all listed on tourismnewzealand.com. They're meant to really to be a regular check-in, I guess for my team and myself to give you guys an update, and also for you guys to ask any questions on that. Before I go into that, a mini recap, very familiar for all of you guys in terms of what TNZ is working on and where we think we add value. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We're really around how can we grow the share for domestic travel, which is really how can we make sure in difficult times to get more of that money that usually leaves the country in the form of outbound travel into the domestic economy, and vice versa. As we head into difficult time, how can we make sure money comes to the tourism economy with a lot of other competing discretionary spend? The core of that is really, we need to break routine. How can we get Kiwis to do new stuff? How can we get them to not keep doing what they're already doing? Which really gets us to the strategy in a nutshell that you guys, I think, all are familiar with, but worth repeating. Our goal is really, how do we get Kiwis to participate in the tourism economy? And we think we do that best by getting Kiwis to be more experimental and venturesome in their approach to New Zealand holiday, which fundamentally points towards the challenge. We want Kiwis to add something new into their New Zealand holiday. I reflected on that slide actually over the weekend, actually together with Stephen as well, in terms of really testing that strategy as well against the changing dynamics at the moment. And as a business, we still feel that that strategy, the core of that strategy, holds true regardless what alert levels we operate in, which is really reassuring. It sort of tells us there's something important and core around adding the new into a New Zealand holiday. What's also encouraging, I think Stephen referred to it as well, collectively as an industry, as we came out of our first lockdown, we had a great campaign come to market, and we now know that inside of getting Kiwis to do something new, collectively we can achieve that. Really demonstrated by some hard numbers, I guess. So I still called the slide, the campaign is working. We're obviously in a new situation today, but I still believe it is working and will be working for us, based on sort of some top level numbers that I wanted to share with you guys. So we've been out in market since the 22nd of May, supported by regional campaigns, supported by a lot of commercial activity by you guys at the operator end as well. What we do know today, over 3 million people in New Zealand have already been reached by the campaign, be it through TV, outdoor, run-off sites, digital placements, etc. So we know Kiwis are starting to get familiar with the campaign and getting excited about a domestic holiday. We also know, as a result, we get about 70,000 visits to newzealand.com per week. So we know not only are Kiwis interested in seeing the campaign, they're also taking action, and newzealand.com is one touch point that we can see that consumers are taking action. Other things that we're really, I think, excited about, we also run things what we call intent uplift studies. So really asking consumers, hey, before and after being exposed to our campaign, has your intent now changed? And we're seeing some really strong uplifts of almost 5 percentage points. People after seeing the campaign saying, look, I'm now more likely to actually take a domestic holiday. All that's really, really, really good pointers that the core of getting Kiwis to something new is working, and we can achieve that as an industry. Probably the last point I wanted to share on this slide as well. You would have seen we run frequently now some additional data sources as well. The last one was sort of during school holidays together with Data Ventures, seeing where did consumers in New Zealand travel year on year, has that changed? And we know that every single region in New Zealand, winter school holidays compared to winter school holidays the year before, had a significant uplift in terms of visitors out of region coming to their region, which I think should give us a real confidence that we can actually do this and we can make a difference as an industry to get domestic travel up year on year. Stephen referred to it as well. So my favorite slide at the moment is really, that's all good. So we know we can get things moving. We can have a positive impact. But one thing is also certain, that challenges will keep coming. So the two pictures that currently are top of mind for me. Number one, the left slide here, you see a bit of a curve that really contrasts net departures from New Zealand, short-term departures, which really shows us between April and September, historically, more Kiwis are departing to go on a holiday overseas than international visitors come in. We all know mid-September this will change. So we will see the most challenging periods coming our way. I'm also really confident that domestic will pick up some of that shortfall, but it's just a reality that as we come from October onwards, we will starting to really feel no international visitors arriving. The other part is obviously the new situation in terms of current alert levels. We're now in a situation where the country is starting to operate at different alert levels. Stephen alluded to the fact that we had a plan sitting there that I never hoped we need to use, but we had a plan which really allowed us to act pretty quickly to go, what do we now do as a business as different areas of New Zealand, different regions operate at different alert levels. With that in mind, I just wanted to use the next 5 minutes to speak to that. And then we still have Stephen here for another 5 minutes to take any questions, and then spend the last 10-15 minutes on specifically some activity reminders for you guys at the operator side as well. So coming into that, the big question or the big plan for us now is, what does Do Something New New Zealand, what does Tourism New Zealand's activity look like as we operate under different COVID alert levels? So it's a bit of a consideration, I think really important for us to remember. We're basing this on the information we have got today, but the key considerations for that plan remain really true. Number one, our plan is based on number one, varying alert levels across New Zealand. So what does it mean if a region operates under level 2 and other region under level 3? What does it actually mean for us as an industry, and particularly for us as Tourism New Zealand, where we can assist and help? The second one, we are in a, I guess it's a positive situation that we have got learnings and analysis from the previous lockdown. So we learned a bit how consumers behave through that. And then the third consideration, again, whatever we do, we also always have to keep in mind, how do New Zealanders feel about this? So we want to be really conscious that the activity that we put into market also has the desired impact and doesn't have any impacts that we don't want in terms of consumers or Kiwis really not seeing the value of tourism anymore. All points towards our plan. These factors fundamentally then will drive the likelihood, the propensity of Kiwis to travel around the country. Like I said earlier on, we questioned that really closely together with our exec at Tourism New Zealand as well. But we really felt the core strategy that we're setting out here domestically as a country to putting a new into a New Zealand holiday holds true, is relevant across all COVID levels. We want Kiwis to do new things, and we also know that New Zealanders would like to try out new things. So that remains true, and the strategy holds up really, really well across all those COVID alert levels. Which then gets us sort of to the guiding principle as a business. We really want to make sure the activity that we put into market closely matches the COVID alert level system as well, because we want to make sure whatever we do is supported by the approach to health and security, and we want to make sure our campaign really adds to that as well. Which on a top level really points towards, as the country has been operating at level 1, you obviously see the full campaign out in market, the full suite of market activities being present all across New Zealand. As we now have got a situation where we've moved into level 2 and 3, this obviously had to have an impact on our campaign activity as well, which really means in an activity level 2, we really want to make sure both our media mix and our messaging reflects that. And as you move higher up into the levels where we then have restrict and eliminate, this would obviously also see our campaign adapted accordingly, with the messages really reflecting those health requirements, and likewise also the channels and the content we would put to market would change quite dramatically. From at level 1, consumers are really in a mindset, they're keen to travel, they want to learn about it, we want to show them offers and opportunities, how they can participate. As you operate in level 3 and 4, those opportunities become less, and you want to really operate more at the brand layer to really still tell the story about really attractive domestic travel, but less about what that looks like tomorrow from a booking perspective. We also designed the level to be really agile, and to Stephen's point earlier on, we wanted to be able to also cope with a scenario where different alert levels exist across different regions. So just as an example, what that means as of today, as we have Auckland in level 3 for the next foreseeable 2 weeks, we would operate in our campaign framework in Auckland at a level 3, which is really more or less at a brand layer, really still talking to consumers around what a New Zealand domestic holiday could feel like. The rest of New Zealand, we would operate at level 2. We would make some choices around which media channels we use. So, for example, you currently would not see us on TV, but we would be out there in our digital channels, in our content partnerships, added on also really in a safe way also for customers to still enjoy travel in those regions where it's safe to do so. Before I go into the reminder in terms of getting Kiwis to do something new, which is just really a recap on some of the activities you can participate with us, just wanted to take a break whilst we still got Stephen for 5 minutes. If there's any further questions in terms of the framework or anything else that has come to mind, whilst we still got Stephen on the call.
Thanks, Bjoern. Thanks for sharing that, and hopefully that's been helpful to some of the operators out there. I'm sure there'll be a few follow-up questions from this as it gets digested by people. But just again, thanks again for having me on the call this morning. Appreciate it.
Cool. I think, Stephen, you're safe to go.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks for joining us this morning.
You're welcome.
Great. I'll crack back into the screen as well. I think, guys, what's really important to us, and Stephen as well, is we want to make sure we talk to consumers at the right time with the right message, and that framework that we just shared allows us to do that quite flexibly as well. If you've got any question in particular, you've got my email as well. If you want to learn any more, drop us a line on that as well. Happy to share in more detail individually as well. I'll just jump back into the presentation that I just left. Hold on, bear with me for a second, which is really some of the content you already have seen. I'm just keen that I always know some new people turn up in those calls. I want to make sure everybody's across what else we can do together to get Kiwis and to do something new. Oops, and hold on, this is not working anymore. So I'll have to go to a different presentation. Apology, guys. Cool. So I think the one part, even before us going to level 3 in Auckland and level 2 to the rest of the country, is really how we collectively participate via social. So we're investing quite a bit of time and money in really making sure New Zealand looks amazing on a domestic level to New Zealanders as well from a social perspective. So we're keen to build this together with you guys. So one of the areas we really want to build up is how do we collectively use social even better than we already are. So our next webinar from a domestic point of view is on the 21st of September, where our head of social media, Bjoern, will run a webinar, a workshop for us to really go through in more detail how we collectively can leverage social more, how we can do some things easier. If you're not already doing it, please use our hashtag do something new NZ. Together with Bjoern then in that workshop as well, we will learn a few more things, what great could look like and what else we could be doing in this environment. Second one about newzealand.com. Very much linked back also to what I talked earlier on around our campaign starting to adapt to different alert levels. So one of the areas that thank you everyone for participating heavily with deals information on newzealand.com. One of the areas we're quite consciously looking at is now newzealand.com, how we can activate it across regions, how can we make sure that the right content only appears in the right areas. So currently in terms of activities, you wouldn't see them online, but we're working through that, how that comes back to life as we now move or are in level 2, where it's safe to participate in tourism activities in the rest of the country. If you haven't already used the site, please do. There's a lot of information here, newzealand.com/NZ. The only other build, if you're already using it from a deal perspective, make sure you currently select both New Zealand and international as the market where you list your deals. The reason for that being is that as the likes of Google start listing sites organically, start crawling their sites, our international version is still higher ranked domestically than domestic. It's just something that's going to improve over time and take some time. So currently, as you list deals, make sure you tick both international and New Zealand when you publish a deal to get the benefit of best traffic. The third one, you would have seen lots of content in our media partners, NZME and stuff all across the country. We will continue to drive those really, really hard because we think they're a really great platform, particularly as you go into levels 2 and 3, because they really speak to that area of how do you keep a domestic holiday engaging, interesting. Even if you go to the dream layer, we believe our content partnerships with our publishers are core to that. A good way to participate in that, I know you guys are all super linked in with your regional tourism organizations as well. We continue to share with them what some of those content plans look like, so they can also give you some more additional advice what some of those content plans might be that come up with our bigger content partnerships. The third one that I wanted to stop in case you're not using it already, we've seen some really, really good uptake on our partner toolkit, Do Something New New Zealand. So this is a toolkit that every operator, every tourism business that promotes a domestic tourism offering can use. It gives you access to logos. It gives you access to lockups if you want to use it in your advertising, gives you access to some imagery as well. With a fundamental opportunity, how can you link your activity closely to our brand investment? To really make sure as consumers start seeing your content, it links back to Do Something New New Zealand and you get that benefit of our investment into that. If you haven't done so already, it's downloadable via visuals.newzealand.com. You create a little account, doesn't take very long, and from there you can download the whole toolkit, which is pretty straightforward. I've been told by people who have also used it that it's really easy to use, quite flexible. The other build, if you notice anything in the toolkit that you go, I wish, oh man, I wish I would have that. I wish Tourism New Zealand could do that. Just tell us. This is sort of, we very much look at it as the toolkit in phase number 1. And we want to make this better over time. So really matches how it can really help you accelerate your business. A couple of examples where our colleagues, the left one was a mock-up that our colleagues at Auckland have put together for us, or our colleagues in Dunedin, how that can be used. And then from an operator perspective as well, we've got the holiday parks, for example, down there, how you can use it in your social, how you can use it in other advertising. It's being used quite widely now, which is awesome to see. It's just all around reinforcing that messages to Kiwis as well. Do something new, New Zealand. The more often we get that out, the more likely we will see that change in behavior and Kiwis participating more in a domestic holiday. The last one, a call out to our TNZ newsroom. So this is really an intent. We want to bring forward big stories to our publishers that they might have not picked up. So if you've got a big news story from your region, from your product that you feel is really valid nationally, that they might be interested in, please pop them through to our newsroom team at media@tnz.gov.nz. They're hungry for new ideas, and we then make a commitment. If the idea is big enough and really speaks to the point to something New Zealand, we want to help pitch that to national media as well, to get that content out in the earned space as well. The last point for me, a quick pause on our nationwide partnerships. So I think I've referred to them quite often in our previous webinars as well. They're really important to us because those are national partners that really help us cover the whole country, and we're really building on some existing activity that they've always done domestically already. Our partner, Air New Zealand, we've always worked with them international. We now got a strong domestic campaign in place with them as well. If you were on a plane lately, you might have seen that, for example, the in-flight entertainment system now features quizzes around doing something new in New Zealand. The Kia Ora magazine was completely focused on domestic travel in the last issue, and we'll continue to use those channels to build that. Before we went to level 3, you would have also seen our first joint domestic campaign with Air New Zealand, promoting flights into our winter destinations and so on. Together with Air New Zealand and the team, we now got an annual plan in place with lots of other exciting activities coming up. We're currently reviewing what's appropriate at what time, but it's a pretty strong plan that will help us to get through the summer months as well. Likewise, with our colleagues at AA Traveller, the intent with them is really around how do we get Kiwis this summer to do a great New Zealand road trip. So we've got an annual partnership in place with them as well, and we are planning a big New Zealand summer road trip campaign with them sometime around September, October, when it is safe to do so, to really start talking to travelers. As, again, this summer, it's the time to go out on the road and explore our great country. The last one, the Department of Conservation, it's a big partnership for us. It's super important to us as well. We want to make sure that we really link in closely with our colleagues at DOC and vice versa, because it's really complementary messaging, how we work together, how do we get Kiwis to do and explore New Zealand safely, what some of the great products that DOC has to offer. It's kind of a natural partnership, so you'll see a lot of work together with them as well. With that in mind, I've come to the end of my presentation. I hope there's a couple of reminders for you that you might have not done before. Hope there's a few questions as well, and probably more than a hope, really wanted to make sure you guys have got the clarity around how we're going to work through the next few weeks, month, as we deal with different alert levels all around the country. There's a plan in place that we're now acting upon, and you'll see the advertising continue at different alert levels in different regions as per that plan. Hey, Paul, I'll stop sharing and see if there's any questions left. I think I saw one pop up.
Yes, indeed, there is. Thank you, Bjorn. There is one question. David says he's detecting a resistance from locals in his area, wherever that may be, to outsiders entering their environment. Are we hearing of any such examples?
Thank you, David. That's a really good question. So I think the only one that I've detected so far, for example, I think there was a bit of a few stories around, I think it was Ruhapeo in particular, and the EV up there as well. So I saw that over the weekend. So we don't detect anything currently in sort of a research insights perspective, but certainly I have read some stories around that. Why I like the question, David, is we are looking at some of our research insights, how we time that as well. So we do a dip in terms of domestic consumer sentiment every 2 to 3 months in New Zealand to give us some of those answers. And that's one of those questions we need to add in now to dive a bit deeper. Other areas we want to dive a bit deeper into is in terms of how has consumer sentiment shifted with another change in alert levels. Are customers still really keen and interested traveling domestically? That's certainly the feeling we get that they are, but our insights that we're putting into market will give us that information as well. So yeah, to answer your question, I have read 1 or 2 stories, but we haven't detected anything from an insights perspective that I could quantify.
It is a good point, isn't it, Bjorn? I know if we have the country broken up into 2 specific zones or alert levels, then people may be more cautious about interaction with people who either are from the more restrictive zone or people who have been there within
100%.
a period. So I guess this is a bit of a learning experience and to judge sentiment.
Yeah, and we're very cognizant of it without having hard data to back it up. But if you go back to the alert or our campaign levels fundamentally, that's why we probably err on the side of caution in some of those things, aka Auckland at level 3. We want to make sure we don't really tease out any offers encouraging tactical travel right now, but we certainly will talk about stories, what to do and what next.
Comment here from Patrick. As usual, great work. With New Zealand regions being on different alert levels, do you think TNZ will play a role in helping regions overcome negative perceptions resulting from COVID clusters if they appear in their respective regions?
Thanks, Patrick. As always, that's a good question as well. So I think what I really personally love about working domestically and what we've already done with the regions as well, we want to make sure we work with them on the areas that they would like us to work with. So if you look at from a national level perspective, we know there's a gap in the market that how do we get Kiwis to do something new? That's why we really as TNZ believe that adds a lot of value. If there was a requirement from regions, probably via RTNZ, to go, guys, here's a couple of other areas that we really would like to work with you, we'd certainly look into that. Once we know what those challenges are and once we want to solve them collectively, in that case, I really would want to look at the whole group, what the challenge is. Is there a gap that Tourism New Zealand can help with, or can the regions solve it by themselves? That's sort of the three things we usually go through. And if we end up out of the process to say, yep, there's something we need to collectively work on, we'd certainly be open to look into that.
Thanks, Bjoern.
Excellent.
Pretty much everybody's question. They seem to be happy with how things are going. Last chance and call out for questions, everybody. Otherwise, we'll let you get on with your day jobs.
Hey guys, thank you for joining the webinar. Again, those series are quite frequent, every 4 to 6 weeks. It's really the intent. What I found, a couple of operators sometimes miss a webinar. Here's another chance for them to learn more about domestic. So as you hear more from operators as well, just point those series out. They're really meant to go, here's an opportunity to connect with a domestic team, learn about some stuff that you might already know, they might not know. This is sort of closing that gap as well. Guys, thank you very much. And if you're in Auckland, all the best under level 3. Rest of the country, all the best over level 2. And we'll see you guys soon.
Great. Thank you, Bjoern, and thank you again, everybody, for joining us. And remember, just head to Tourism New Zealand's corporate website, tourismnewzealand.com, and you can find recordings of this and any other webinar that we've done and a list of upcoming webinars as well. So thank you once again on behalf of our team. Ka kite. See you all soon.
Thanks, team.